Hi, I'm John Cutterback. This is The Intentional Household, a LifeCraft podcast. Join us in seeking timeless wisdom for our time. Very happy to have my wife, Sofia, with me here today. Today's episode is Sunday at Home, a practical approach. I'm just going to maybe start by saying why I'm so excited about this and what I hope that we can do here in this discussion. Certainly something we've discussed a lot,
You sure
isn't it,
have.
dear?
Yeah.
Kind of in our day-to-day life, week-to-week life. And happy to share this with you. I think in looking at Sunday, we're going to have the opportunity in many ways to go to the heart of human life, certainly of life in the home. Sunday, by a divine design, is the heart of the week. It's not just the most important day. In a sense, it really is the day that gives meaning to the other days, around which the other days revolve. And so, really, part of what we're going to reflect on here before we get down into the weeds is why how we observe Sunday is really, really central to who we are and what kind of home, what kind of marriage and family life we're going to have. So then we'll get practical, right? And then we'll talk about some practical things. That sound like a decent plan?
That sounds great. I'm excited. Let's go.
All right. So should we start with some principles? I'd say here's where I begin. Um, God commanded something here. I think it's really important to start with this. That I think our approach to Sunday should be: God knew what he was doing, and he was being very intentional when he made the third commandment be to keep holy the Lord's Day. That this in commanding this, of course, we need to learn this about God's commands in general, right? They're absolutely never random. They're always about our fullness of life. We're kind of right here in the first tablet of the old law. Keep holy this day. So we enter into it with the sense of, here's a plan. It's a plan that comes from the Creator himself. In our job here is to discover that and enact that. And to the extent that we do, it's gonna transform our home and transform our life and our week.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that strikes me as you say this is you're using the word command, which of course that is exactly what God did when he told us to keep holy the Lord's Day. He commanded us. I just want to point out that I think that for us, the word command often has a connotation of a ruler, a despot, someone who's telling you have to do something that you might not want to do, but it's a command, so you have to do it anyway. And in some ways, of course, we can look at God's command that way. We have to do them. But I think it's very important for us to kind of almost have a renewed or fresh kind of perspective on the word command, that in the case of God, all of his commands are super abundantly designed for our good and for our flourishing. You kind of mentioned that, but I wanted to underscore that because I think often we all have leftover experiences from childhood where the word command makes us bristle a tiny bit. So before we get too far in talking about this command of God to keep his day holy, I think it's wonderful for us to go back and look at again and be edified anew that God's commands are very different from those that we've most likely experienced in our human life from other human beings. And because they're really, God so perfectly understands how we're designed and he knows what's going to make us happy. And so his commands are absolute because his desire for our happiness is absolute. And so I want to go into this talking about this commandment, keeping that in mind, because then it reminds us that this one day of the week that specifically has a command is God saying, wow, I want you to be completely full and completely happy. So do this so that you can achieve that.
Amen. I think that's a great perspective. I mean, maybe another way of saying that is God's commands are key in telling us who we are, kind of in showing us the way into living the life that we're designed for.
Yeah, absolutely.
So here we are, Sunday at home. This is a very big part of learning who we are, and frankly, if we're blessed with children, how we celebrate Sunday, I dare say how we observe Sunday, how we live Sunday every week, is at the center of how we're forming our children and telling them who they are in what their life is about. So let's go ahead. I mean, sure, this is not going to be some big biblical exegesis, and we're not going to pretend to be biblical experts. But there's certain things here that are just kind of foundational in the Christian tradition, obviously rooted in the Jewish tradition. And then also, I'm going to bring in a little bit of Aristotle because it's going to fit well. Great philosophy always fits well with faith. But so just for starters, of course, keep holy. One way this has always been interpreted is at the center of Sunday's worship. And, I don't think we need to talk about this at length here. It's certainly worthy of speaking about at length. But the center of Sunday is going to be entering into the divine worship. And kind of in accord with what you were suggesting earlier, dear, where what God is doing is about us. When God commands us to worship him, this is not some type of God seeking something for himself. In worship, we become and find ourselves. And so he is commanding, likewise lovingly inviting us, make worship be the center of your life. Sunday is the center of your week. Worship is the center of Sunday. So I said we kind of just take that for granted here. The liturgy is this thing that is kind of the pulsing energy center of our life, and that it have that place in Sunday is, of course, where we begin.
Yeah, that sounds very straightforward and simple. That Sunday, the center of Sunday is worship. And it's very beautiful. But I'm just wondering, I want to draw you out on that a little bit because sometimes I'm sure all of us have had an experience in literature of the description of Sunday or the Sabbath day of everyone sitting in the parlor that's usually darkened all week on horsehair chairs with feet barely touching the ground and having to sit still and only read picture books of Jesus on that day. And the children are dying and everybody can't stand Sunday. And so I'd like for you to kind of unpack a little bit what that means, worship. I mean, for myself, I found that Sunday was a little bit like, oh, all week I'm working. And here comes Sunday, kind of the day off. I could do my projects or mow the lawn or whatever. And no, you can't do that. And so it'd be frustration. And then at one point you shared with me St. Thomas, what he said, St. Thomas Aquinas said about Sundays that completely changed my perspective, where Sunday is now a day that I love and look forward to. So I'm wondering if you could share that quote with us, because I think it will help us to understand what that means to have Sunday be a day that's centered on worship, but not necessarily that image of the extreme version of we can only sit and pray all day on Sunday. So tell us,
and not have any fun, as though it's just
yes, as though somehow having fun
serious,
is going to be kind of antithetical to that spirit of worship. So share with us about
and already, dear, and right there again, what becomes clear here is thinking about Sunday in a sense is thinking about life. To think about how you order your Sunday. While it's different from the rest of the week, it's in a sense emblematic of the rest of the week. How we order that, we really think of what the true hierarchy of things is in life, and we live that most directly on Sunday, where, as it were, again by God's command, we're given this opportunity to take what's most important and be able to really make it obviously the most important by even just how we spend our time, how we arrange our day, putting it first. But again, of course, that not meaning that it's the only thing we do. And so the point from St. Thomas, and this is a paraphrase, but it so struck me, and I remember this is very early on in our marriage, and I came and shared that with you right away, and it was just such a blessing for us. In short, he says, Sunday is the day that by God's design you practice for what life will be like in heaven.
Yeah, so you practice doing on earth what you will be doing forever in heaven.
I mean, think of the richness of that as regards this notion of, again, it's going to be a training. It is, and there will be aspects that it's not always exactly what we would have wanted, right? I think that's something we're going to have to reckon with here a
Mm.
little bit of just like children. When we think of forming the children, sometimes we do have to ask them to do certain things or repeat certain things that isn't what they immediately would have chosen, but then we hope that it gets them that habit and kind of turns their heart and forms their heart. Well, that's the way exactly it is with us. And as it were,
Mhm.
God acting towards us as his children that he's forming, we too need to be kind of reforming, redirecting our heart. And so there can be an aspect of making a choice for things that maybe weren't the ones that we most felt like
Mhm.
doing, but then in doing it, we're going to actually discover the richness. And go,
Well,
please.
I just have a question before we go too much farther. Is St. Thomas says we're practicing doing what we're going to be doing forever in heaven. This sounds fairly obvious, but it wasn't so obvious to me. What are we going to be doing in heaven? What is this thing we're going to be doing in heaven that we're able to start doing here before we get to
Yeah,
heaven?
and of course that's huge, and certainly don't purport to give a complete answer. But one way of putting it is contemplation, kind of, or another way of putting it is really resting in the Lord.
Hmm.
And so this is very rich, meaningful activity. Worship is very much in that class. Contemplation, these go very much together, and we can't sort this all out, but we can just say, hey, the what are we going to do in heaven? We know we're going to be praising God,
Hmm.
and we're going to be singing his praises, living in a close, joyful union with him, resting in him.
Yeah. So resting in him, would you say that is kind of being in his presence and kind of taking him in so that we feel like he's with us present in everything that we're
Amen.
doing? Is that a good way
I
of
do.
putting that?
I
Okay,
do.
great.
And
Super.
so I mean, I mean, what do you want to do with those that you most love? I mean, you want to be together in the richest of ways.
Hmm.
In a sense, heaven is being together with God in the richest of ways. He's invited his children to come. He just wants to live with us to live with him
Yeah.
forever. And every Sunday is a reminder that that's what we're designed for. And I mean, again, think what a gift that is, especially for those of us who aren't able to have so much of that throughout our week. Of course, we want to, it's an important practice to have some aspect of that every day.
Hmm.
But parents, especially, we have our jobs, and,
Hmm.
and we're doing so much work and raising the children, so much to keep the home going. It can be easy to forget these things. We want to try to remember it every day, but this much is sure. We have a whole day where we just restructure and reorder this day to be that clear reminder and enactment of the gifts of here's what you're ultimately made for. This work over here is great and it has its place, but that will pass. Let's remind you of what won't pass. Sunday is a reminder of, a practice in, an habituation in what won't pass.
Yeah. Wow. When you shared with me that quote from St. Thomas on how Sundays should be ordered, the thing that struck me is that it seems like what God seems to be saying to us, like a father, is I've put you in a body, in a world that's physical and material, and that there's a lot that has to be done to keep body and soul together. And so, great, I'm going to give you 6 days a week where you can let that be kind of the center of your focus. Now, obviously, we want to bring God into all of that, but he says, I know you need to keep body and soul together. So I'm going to give you 6 days a week where you can just work on that and do the things that you need to do. And I just ask you to take one day where you put all that work aside, working toward your material and the good of your material existence around
Mm-hmm,
here,
mm-hmm.
and just take that one day and put all that work aside and just rest with me.
I love it, dear, and this doesn't in any way contradict what you said, but maybe just to bring out a feature that we can highlight, and by doing that, that is going to transform those other days and keep what's most important actually central in them too.
Yeah,
So that as
absolutely.
we even go about having to focus on all those practical things of just
Mm-hmm.
keeping clean and keeping fed and keeping sheltered
Right.
and working on relationships, all those things are going to be imbued with the more ultimate meaning that is their ultimate meaning. And those things have importance ultimately in there being a preparation for and pointing for something beyond them.
Yeah.
So it's not this weird dichotomy of, well, 6 days, you got to do this kind of crazy stuff over here. All right, take one day off and we'll let you do some good stuff here to remind you of what's coming. Now go back to the grind.
Yeah.
That Sunday is about being lived in such a way that it leavens the rest of the week and really transforms the rest of the week too.
Yeah, and it affirms the work of the other days of the week as being good.
Yes.
Instead of just saying, as though Sunday we do the one good thing, and then 6 days of the week the Lord says, fine, do all that horrible stuff you have to do, but then come back here on Sunday and be a saint. He's really saying, those 6 days are by my permission and by my blessing and by my sanction. And you really experience that by resting with me on a Sunday.
Amen.
So.
And part of it is going to be, and let's start to get more concrete about what a Sunday looks like. All right. So we said it's going to have worship as central and as being kind of overflowing into the rest of the day. Obviously, the rest of the day still has a certain diversity, but it's a limited diversity. Here, I think it will be helpful to make a distinction. The word rest is so important here, right? I steal this from the great philosopher Joseph Pieper. He says there's a distinction between resting from and resting in. And in Sunday is a day of rest in both senses, but there's an order between them. Resting from is a kind of stopping doing other stuff. Resting in is the more positive sense of kind of being with the beloved. So, I mean, worship, prayer, contemplation, this is all a resting in. And again, there can be resting in one another, us as spouses and with the family, even kind of resting in the gift of God's nature. But in order to do that, we have to carve out the space by resting from. And that's why traditionally we say, Sunday, the Lord's Day, is a day that we set aside the toils of daily life.
Yeah.
That we avoid that manual labor. We avoid the things that are going to really kind of take our attention away from having this day be that unique day of really opening the horizon, just keeping that horizon open into eternity. And hey, obviously we're still bodily. That can only be done so much. You can't set aside everything, but this is the idea: rest from, so we can rest in.
That's a great distinction. Yeah, that's awesome.
So then let's dig then a little bit more down into the weeds, because I think that let's talk about what the day actually looks like. All right, so taking for granted here that there's a kind of centrality of worship. I think that means that liturgy has it shouldn't be pushed into some corner, right? And there's different people, different families are going to do it in different ways. So in a case, kind of when we do it is going to be very important. Then we kind of start to go out from there, and we think about the meals. Sunday should certainly be a day where there's at least one day where there's a very special meal. Now I know that starts to get a little tricky with that's something you've kind of. Well, I think you have something to share on that front, don't you? I can feel it coming.
Yeah. Do you want me to share it right
do.
now?
Yeah,
Okay.
just go ahead and say it, baby.
It's always as the mom in the household who's been with the kids all week long and cooking and cleaning endlessly. Everyone always seems to need to eat. I'm just baffled by it, but that Sunday people still need to keep eating, and that big meal, that wonderful, big, gracious meal that allows us all to sit down together. Someone's making that meal and someone's doing the dishes. In our case, it's usually you, so I'm grateful. But it's so there's a certain amount of work that you can't get away from, and it is just in itself. There's no way to say it's not exhausting. One of the ways that we've kind of tried to alleviate that is to make that meal be a meal that we prepare together. So share the work, and then even the making of the meal becomes something together. I think one can also be creative about what kind of meals one makes. You can have cold meats, which don't require cooking or preparation. And then just the service is a way that you can rest from the cooking. But again, that takes a bit of planning during the week, which in some ways is the light of Sunday casting aura on the rest of the days of the week. You even plan the rest of the days of the week to be able to support the resting from, so that you can do the resting in.
That is a very practical way that we can have the spirit of Sunday come into the rest of the week.
Mm-hmm.
When you think, I say this to my students: try your best. Look, you want to be serious about Sunday. You can't just party all Friday night and all Saturday night, and then okay, well, Sunday's just all about catching up on my studies. Now, look, students are going to need to do some studying probably on Sunday, but just to have this spirit of, in view of Sunday coming, I'm going to make a little sacrifice and set aside some time, beforehand to get certain work done. We'll kind of take. All right, so that's what I say to my students. There's ways that we can do that in our family too, focusing on what's done on Saturday as a preparation. But why don't we share a little bit about kind of the order of our day on the meals? One thing that I think that has worked very well for us is so we go to mass, we come home and we make brunch. And we tend to make it as a group, and that's a very special and fun time where we make sure that nobody has the burden alone of making that meal.
Mm-hmm.
We come into the kitchen together, bright, kind of happy place in the home, and we make that meal together, and we sit down and we eat it together in a way that really just doesn't ever happen any other time in the week, of just all together in this.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's a great way that we make the day be different. We lighten the load. We have a kind of resting from going on just by making sure that we're all doing it together. No one's saying, well, I got to go off and take care of such and such while you
Right.
mama, especially, make the meal. That opens up then the afternoon for, well, we can talk a little bit about that in a moment, but then just the evening. Very often we try to have a simple meal, just so that we don't have to have so much work, or again, if we've been able to kind of prepare something the next day that we have leftovers, or maybe we decide to do the same thing again, of kind of make a special meal, maybe together.
Mm-hmm.
Just, that's something that, different families can work out in different ways, but we kind of like that, working together on the brunch, having a nice, good, kind of nourishing big meal, and that kind of centers the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we always look forward to that time after the meal. If the weather's good, going for a walk, reading a book out loud together, going outside in the front yard and throwing the baseball around. I mean, there's just so many different ways, and they're very much responding to the need of the other members of the household. So when our children were younger, those needs were very different. As they're older, the children love to have time and space to sit and talk and visit and to be all together, so that when someone is sharing something, they feel like the whole family is hearing it. It's very often in a large family, someone shares their heart, and very often it's with one parent or the other, or one sibling or the other. And it's just a very different experience when conversation happens when everyone is there, because then each person feels like what they speak, the whole group hears, and everyone feels that what they're hearing, they receive together as a group. So it's just a very, it's just a very, very special experience of each individual feeling like a member of something that everyone is doing together. It's very important.
I love that. I think that's a great way of putting it. Let's reflect a little bit more then on kind of. And I know I've heard a number of people say it's just hard, and we've certainly experienced this too. It's just hard to discern concretely what do we do, and because there's this challenge of, we want to be rich, but we want people to want to do it, and we want Sunday to be a day that they enjoy. If they don't enjoy it, and Sunday becomes a burden, it seems to be kind of defeating the whole purpose. And I have to admit, there's that. I go back in my mind. It was not that long ago that my youngest son one time was heard to say on a Sunday, it's kind of the clear blue, I hate Sundays.
Oh, that's awful.
And I'm trying to remember. It might have been at one of those moments where I said, "Can we go to the store and go get something?" I just said, "No, we're not. We're not going to go shopping."
Absolutely.
That might have been it. And it might have been where there was something else that he wanted to do that indicates in our judgment was going to interrupt the kind of appropriate rest. And these are often judgment calls. And then they had this sense of, oh, sheesh, well, I want to do that, but I can't do that right now. And then you say, okay, but here, let's do this instead. And very often, at least sometimes, that can be something like, people don't particularly feel like doing it. So I will say it's going to take being intentional. It's going to take being creative. And I think it's key to the extent possible, God grant it to be so. If you're married, the two spouses are in this together. Hey, Sunday can be a very special, should be a very special day of rest and richness in any household of one, the widowed, the old, someone preparing for marriage, whoever it is, these principles apply. But right now, let's talk about the family, a husband and wife coming together and saying, we're going to work together in view of the principles we've been talking about, in view of the invitation and indeed command from God for our own good, to make this be such a special day, to think it through and to come up and be willing with the best things we can think of, be willing to experiment.
One of the things that I've observed in the challenge of trying to make Sunday be a day that everyone enjoys is that it's not just about being intentional, it's about it being an object of desire, something that you love. And I've really noticed with the children that sometimes John will say, well, let's do, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, that's corny. But John is just really extending his heart with love and inviting them into something. And especially if I join in, the children just love to do it because they see that it's something that you are reaching toward with love and affection. And so, sometimes something like, for example, when the children were very young, we had a lot of fun having the children act out a parable. We would read a parable from the scripture and then have the children act it out. And that was one of the things that I thought, oh boy, I don't know how this is going to go over. And, we just approached it with, wow, let's listen to this story that Jesus tells. He tells these stories. We call them parables. And then we told them the story and, the children just listened and listened. And John said, well, I wonder if you all could act that out. And so we took a little bit of time preparing and the children had an absolutely wonderful time. And I realized what happened in that moment is John was opening his heart and creating a space to be with the Lord, to rest with him in scripture. And he was inviting the children in to do that. And so as long as we do these things with joy and love, the children love to come into that. And it's not a fake technique to get them to want to do it.
No,
It actually, it's about, you mentioned this earlier at the very beginning when we started this conversation about our appetites, the things we desire. And I think that we can begin to desire the things of the Lord, to rest with him, to be with him, if we make the effort and take the time to get to know him. And that's one of the ways that Sundays stops being a burden. If we, as the adults in the room, are growing in our relationship with the Lord and beginning to love to have this time to rest with him, the children who do not yet know him maybe see that in our eyes, and they hear it in our voice, and they feel it in our embrace. And so they want to join in on that. So it becomes that when the Lord is the object of our desire.
Amen. And I want to emphasize the aspect there, kind of a lower point, but one worth, I think, drawing out in what you just said, dear, is the spouses being together in it. And that just making a big difference for the children. And here, I think I want to particularly challenge men. It's hard for us, but I think to the extent, especially the dad is willing to kind of take the lead, to be in the zone, and again, there's an artful way of doing this so it doesn't feel phony, but it's done in a winning way. But how are we going to craft this day? How can we make this really come alive? And sometimes we're absolutely going to have to overcome ourselves. But that just jogged something in my memory, dear. I want to just mention this. It was a grace of God, by a grace of God that I think, inspiration at the time, and we've tried with success and failure since then to do it. But very early on in our marriage, we said to one another, even before we have the children really to do this with, let's make Sunday be a certain way just between us. I think this is a huge thing for any marriage, for people preparing for marriage, honestly, even for people after marriage, but particularly this notion of start living the relationship now. This is a great principle in general for the household, the life that you're going to share, that you're going to draw the children into. And here is a major instance of that. What does Sunday look like? Just think if, when we're blessed with children, young, infant, toddler, there's not long before they're really going to be fully cognizant involved, although frankly even toddlers are quite involved in Sunday. But that we have a certain spirit, certain practices, and that we have cultivated, developed our own hearts, and that we're enjoying this, that we are willingly, even if not always, with jumping for joy, that we're willingly setting aside things that can be hard to set aside in order to enter into the rest of the day. Our children are going to naturally experience that. It's going to be such a gift to them to help them do that. Not to mention, by the way, others that we might invite into our home.
Yeah.
Right. And just to make home such a special place.
Yeah. I want to get a little bit more practical, although I really am going to ask you to elucidate a principle. When we're looking at the kind of things that we do on Sunday, I mean, obviously some of them are explicitly directed toward looking at God, talking about Him, Scripture, the worship. But the day is long, and there are certainly other things that we do. And Pope Benedict's response to the little Vietnamese girl when she asked him, what was it like when you were a little boy? He draws this incredible picture of Sundays with his family. And so I want to draw you out a little bit on some of the other kind of activities that we can do that are resting from and resting in that aren't explicitly scripture oriented. So for example, the question of entertainment versus leisure, and how can we think about what kind of activities, while not being explicitly God-centered, are still supporting that God-centered resting in. So just talk a little bit about that.
Well, thank you. Here's a great place that I have found Aristotle's distinctions to be super helpful. So his notion of leisure is a much richer notion. I made some videos on this where we distinguish leisure and work and amusement. That might be helpful to set this up, but I'll try to do it very, very briefly here. Leisure activities are activities that have their end, their meaning in themselves. They're sought for their own sake because they are so rich. They are the kind of activities where we are most alive, the kind of activities that life is most about.
Can you give us some examples?
Are these leisure and activities, exactly the ones that we spoke of earlier, like worship, resting in the Lord, kind of a contemplative gaze, that a contemplative vision and appreciation and resting in beautiful things, another human person, the gift of nature, especially the divine, especially the divine persons.
Oh, that's very different from the contemporary use of the word leisure. We have leisure suits, we have leisure world. It doesn't seem to be referring to any of those things.
And again, there's a lot to say there, but the thing that's in common there is it's not work. Granted, so one thing I like to say is you can tell a lot about a civilization of what does it do when it's not working. One of the things that's particularly characteristic of the world in which we live is that when we're not working, we're amusing ourselves or seeking entertainment, play. And the thing is, that then basically has the name of leisure. If the term leisure is still used to mean what you do when you're not at work, it tends to have been reduced down to this very low denominator where we really have lost a sense, the practice, the habit, the custom, the ability to have those richer kind of activities. So you have this very empty life of kind of work. Oh, well, now what do I get to do now with my free time, my quote leisure time? Well, it looks like simply vacation, entertainment, play.
Can you contrast specifically entertainment to leisure? Like what do you mean by entertainment? And is there sometimes that entertainment goes toward leisure or can be a leisure activity?
And I'm so here, Aristotle in the translations into English it's often the word amusement. And so here, all right, let's get philosophical here for a moment.
Okay.
Well, hey, let's be philosophical all the time. But amusement is basically a pleasant diversion of some sort. And there it's connected to the word play. When you think entertainment, this doesn't have to be a negative notion. It's, we're just kind of we're doing something fun. It's you're throwing the ball, you're playing a game, you're watching a television show, you're telling jokes. I mean, these things are, you're jumping, you're going down the water slide at the park. These things are kind of fun play. They're fundamentally a diversion, but when Aristotle says, okay, so we have kind of amusement or play over here, and then we have leisure, they're not absolutely mutually exclusive, but nonetheless, they do need to be distinguished. And he actually points out then too, many people tended to think that happiness is just kind of in amusement. And he pointed out that's because many of the kind of rich and famous of the time, what do they turn to? They turn to amusement. So, oh, well, maybe that's the best thing there is to do. But very often, as Aristotle points out, we human persons have not discerned and learned how to do the deeper kind of activities that are really the truer leisure. And so we need to learn to see the difference, that there is this kind of higher way of being, the kind of thing that when you cultivate it is ultimately much more fulfilling to us.
Mm-hmm.
You could even say more fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's a funny use of the term,
Mm-hmm.
but that takes a development in us. So are we doing okay on that distinction?
Yeah. And I guess following on that, what I want to ask is there a place for entertainment in Sunday?
Right. Yeah, great.
Or is there a place at all? And if so, how does that look?
Okay. Well, how about this? As Aristotle would point out, play, entertainment, amusement has a very important place in life, fundamentally as kind of a relaxation. As a relaxation that then would empower you to go back to, frankly, can empower you to go back to work better. And that's important,
Mm-hmm.
but also can empower you to enter into a deeper leisure. So this is the way I would put it. Key to observing Sunday and living Sunday well is to learn how certain kinds of, we'll just use the word amusement, certain kinds of amusement are better than others because they are more fitted to kind of lead you into, can be a good segue into a kind of preparation for leisure. Whereas the lower, more banal kinds of amusement can actually, I think, make you be more shallow.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't prepare you for leisure. They might even kind of inoculate you against it. So this is a big life issue. This isn't just about Sunday, although maybe it's especially highlighted there. We have so many people, especially the younger generation, but frankly, it's not just them, who have become kind of deadened in their banal, often technologized entertainment that kind of deadens their soul. It doesn't really even ultimately relax them. It doesn't help them go back to the more meaningful. But there are ways of doing these lighter things, the amusement, the play, that actually prepare us, that help us, and that's what we're looking for, especially on Sunday.
Yeah. So an example of that would be, for example, if you sit down to read Treasure Island with the family on a Sunday afternoon, that's different from reading scripture, but and it's an amusement, a diversion, just this light, piece of creative literature. But it provides an opportunity, one where everyone can experience the thing together, and then provides the opportunity perhaps for further discussion, or even just people saying, wow, that was so great. I really loved it so it gives this opportunity to have a kind of something higher and greater than the thing itself, which is a kind of resting in, versus, oh, let's all play video games together on Sunday afternoon. And everybody's very diverted, and it's a loosening of the bowstring. And maybe in some ways it's a resting from, but it doesn't really provide an opportunity to have a further resting in. So would that capture what you're saying?
I think you're saying it very well. So I think this is a nice balance furthering of what we were talking about earlier. We mentioned, okay, so on Sunday, and one thing that we've done is done a prodigal son play or the Good Samaritan play with the children in order to bring in a little bit of scripture. There's no doubt that bringing the word of God into Sunday, even outside of the liturgy, I think is a very, very important thing to do. That said, I think there's such thing as being kind of hyper pious, of going too far, and okay, we just have to do explicitly religious things. Part of the art of observing Sunday well, not just for the children's sake, for all of our sake, is to find these things, this kind of, I'll say, the richer amusement, the really fun, diverting, relaxing kind of amusements that kind of shade into leisure. That's the thing. At that higher end, that they're coming close. And you gave, I think, a great example. And let's think about some more, and even just be thinking in those terms. What are the things that will be genuinely relaxing and fun, but are the ones that kind of give a context where, may I put it this way, at any moment something deeper might break out. It's not as though you're not being scrupulous about, oh my gosh, we can't do anything light. No, that's missing the point. When we get Sunday right, the art of doing Sunday right, the art of doing life right, will have the appropriate place for real fun and amusement. But being kind of discerning, especially in an age that's foisting so many banal ones upon us and making it harder to choose those ones. Even reading, Treasure Outland out loud, for some people here that are like, oh my gosh, I mean, that seems a bridge too far. I mean, everyone just wants to sit down and watch the television. I understand that is part of the challenge, but reading that aloud is a richer thing in general than just simply watching. And so it is going to take a little bit of an effort.
Yeah, I think it's all what you're saying is making me realize that things like going for a walk, for example, they're revealing to us that all of these things that God has put in the world are a way of him giving himself to us. And so that's why to exclude them in a radical way on Sunday, because it's not simply looking intently at the word of God, is a way of just narrowing this incredible gift that God has given us. And so I guess it would be wonderful to search for amusements that allow us to see that all of these things God has created for us to share his love with us. And if it helps us see that, then in fact, it brings us back to that gazing at him.
Amen. So let's kind of move towards wrapping up by being really practical here. I think, first of all, if some people on thinking about this are saying, wow, that's just a bridge too far. I mean, where I am, or my spouse is, or my children are in our household, we're just, what you're painting sounds so nice, but it's going to be too hard for us to do because people won't want to do these things. Then my answer is baby steps. It's baby steps. Start raising the bar a little bit. Start introducing in small portions richer kinds of activities together. Don't go cold turkey. Don't force everybody all of a sudden, okay, here's our whole new approach to Sunday. This is where we have to be savvy. And living the good life is ultimately the art of the possible. Right? So what are we going to do here on this Sunday to raise the bar a little bit? We're sharing, some ideas of things that, by the grace of God and working on a number of years, we're still trying to figure it out. And some things certainly didn't work, but some things that have really worked for us is, going for a walk outside, enjoying nature, and just you don't have to bring anything along. You just go, and you're having conversation. You break, depending on how many people there's, the whole family, extended family, the friends. Break smaller discussion, large group discussion, pointing things out, looking at the beauty of nature. Song. We love to try to emphasize song to the extent that we can try to do that. That can be such a gift there. Telling stories, reading stories out loud, playing that family game, playing that board game, playing a yard game. These are the kinds of things that, particularly if we approach it with a certain spirit, that there's real space here for deeper personal connections to be made, for richer things to kind of shine through. And I like the example you gave of reading the story out loud. How many times do you ever been reading a story out loud where all of a sudden we just come upon this beautiful thing we're reading? Of course, it helps to have some good stories, we come upon a beautiful aspect where we all just almost can take our breath away. There's something so beautiful. Maybe even, we start to cry, that there's something so wonderful in this story, and it just opens this vista where before we're just kind of relaxing, and now we're really appreciating something richer. Bam! That can be, as it were, a real presence of leisure. And Sunday is just a day, to the extent we can, to try to set it up for that.
Yeah, and I will say also about the reading, now that our children are older and most of them are beyond the home, it is kind of a testimony to this experience of something more profound that has happened in reading, because they all are telling us that how fondly they look back on those experiences and those stories and that time together. I'll say for myself, a very practical thing in making Sunday work was needing to change my interior disposition about Sundays. And one of the things that really helped me was to hold my feet to the fire by really sticking to not doing business on Sunday. And that's a really hard one, because busy life, I forgot the milk, or I didn't go shopping yesterday. Oh, can we just swing by after Mass and pick up blah, blah, blah. And when, you don't want, the Lord doesn't want to be brutal to you if you're an overwhelmed mom and you didn't make it grocery shopping on Sunday. It's not like on Saturday, excuse me. It's not like a lightning bolt's going to come down and hit you if you have to go pick something up at the grocery store. But when I started being kind of serious about that and saying, look, I don't really have a crisis. I need to try to plan my week differently so that I don't need to go to the grocery store on Sunday. Or, oh, that sale starts on Sunday. If I don't buy it now, everything will be gone by Monday when I go. It's really kind of taken an interior commitment on my part to, one, arrange my week differently so that I don't do business on Sunday, or just really exercise a trust in the Lord. If I miss that sale because it started on a Sunday and everybody picked everything up, I'm going to trust that the Lord is going to give me what I need, not X, Y, and Z store. And so that has really held my feet to the fire. It's kind of put skin in the game. And so it kind of orients me differently. Do I really consider that my life with God is important? And if it's that important, am I willing to rearrange my week to make that space for him? And that's really been a slow work for me that has slowly changed my interior disposition, where now I really look forward to and love Sundays. Whereas, before, even when, we had talked about all these good ways of celebrating Sunday, it was an effort for me to do it. And I had to really kind of remind myself, wait, why do I do this? And keep looking at it, and it's kind of like almost holding an object before you and turning it and seeing it from different sides. And then you get to know it and you really love it. So that has been one of the practical things. It's not very popular to talk about, but is really being serious about not doing business on Sundays.
I think we have to make sure we don't become scrupulous about it. This is not about being judgmental. And we're not here to say exactly what the law of God demands or not. We're going to leave that to individual discernment. Our principle is that in any case, God's directive here, God's command, is serious, and it demands that we clear a space. And are we going to be serious about clearing that space and receiving the gift of making that happen? And it will take work, and it's probably good that our attitude be not just simply what are we absolutely required, but kind of just taking the approach of what is going to work best here. This connects with issues of technology, by the way. You talk about going online. Now I remember one time also that our son was very angry about it being Sunday. We realized there was something we wanted to buy online for his sports, whatever. He said, "Oh, can we go get that online?" I said, "No, we're not going to go online. Well, it's not going to the store." I said, we are still not going to shop online on Sunday." And that was part of, again, the gift. It's a freedom. It's a freeing of the space.
Yeah, it's wonderful, actually.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard, but once you've kind of said it and decided that this is how we're going to do things here together, is it that we're not going to, again, everyone's going to find their own things. It might be things like deciding you're not going to check your email
Mm-hmm.
on Sunday, or not until Sunday night. Whatever exactly is clearing that space is going to be part of kind of setting up that greater richness for presence together.
Yeah, and isn't it amazing? It seems, when God gave that as a commandment so many, 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 many years ago, it's like he already knew that technology would be here constantly encroaching all the time. So this disembodied demand on us that doesn't have any limitations, constantly encroaching. I know that so many people have just said, simply from a psychological perspective, physiological perspective, having, phone-free zones or phone-free times, or places where you can just turn off all of this exterior bombardment, is much healthier for us. And, look at this. God was saying years and years and years ago, just keep my day holy, say no to those things, create a little bit of extra space, and you will flourish and be happy.
Well, dear, there's a lot more that we could reflect on here together, and I thank you for taking the time, and I hope our sharing this is just give some principles, give some encouragement. It's all it's all gift, and different families are gonna find their way into the right way to do that. But I think the Lord is going to bless us if we set forth to do it. It's going to bear amazing fruit for ourselves, if we're married, for our marriage, for our children, for the guests that we invite into our home. It's going to give us a spirit of kind of how you order these things, how you value these things, and kind of taking the more heavenly perspective that surely is going to overflow into the rest of the week and have our home be so much more of a kind of full place of life
Yes, absolutely.
permanently because of that.
Sunday is a wonderful place to become human.
And to begin. Well, great being with you all. Look forward to seeing you again soon.